Got it?
Let me see. Dating. Yeah. Make sure it's going live though.
I bought a new Japanese anime.
Oh yeah?
Heroic Tales of Arslan. Bit me. Bit me. Ah.
Refresh the page. What the fuck? Didn't have an error message, but now it's oh, there we go. Now it's online. So, recording should be cool. Alright, we gotta get started. Sound ready.
You on?
Yeah.
You good?
Hey guys, welcome back to Tabletop RPG Now. Sorry, we had a little bit of technical difficulties, but we are good. We're live.
Good to go, I think.
Yeah.
More technical difficulties. This is definitely a player error. This isn't something that the Dungeon Master would have done. It's definitely one of the newbie player problems. Just give us 1 second here. Good to go?
Yep, we're good.
Once again, we're the hosts here.
Corey
and Dallas.
Dallas over there.
This is the show.
His stripper name.
This is the show where the old DM goes to combat the new school player for the questions you guys shoot us. Today's topic is campaign navigation. What do you think about that?
Well, I think like high seas campaigns are really awesome, you know, and no.
Campaign navigation, how to navigate through your campaign both as a player and a dungeon master. There's a lot of things that are going to be incorporated into today's topic to include things we may have already went over that probably were worth saying again.
Right.
Or worth saying again. Campaign navigation. I'm gonna tell you a little bit. Dungeons and Dragons writer Bob Salvador, R.A. Salvador. One of the reasons people claim his books are fantastic and just so amazing are because they are more character driven than plot driven. What I mean by that is the overall plot is not nearly as important as the characters and their backstories.
Especially in a game where each individual person is playing their own character.
Right. So let's say for example, you guys are in just a random, temple. You guys are dungeon diving. You go to some lost pyramids trying to find, riches. Maybe the paladin's there to get money for his church, and say the paladin finds a holy sword and comes across something that would set him on a holy quest. His friends want to go with him, but in order to do so, they know they're leaving riches behind, the pyramid's not fully finished, and you as a DM are pissed off because you spent 6 hours putting this thing together, right? That's part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just part of it. You can't say, well, no, as a paladin, you'd want to get riches for your church first. Maybe the paladin deems whatever quest this is being more important than these riches. I mean, as a DM, unless he specifically or she specifically says, I am, a paladin of Torm or Palor, etc., and what would I deem more important? I want to do the right thing. At which point you have the opportunity to tell them what you feel as a DM is right, but you can't tell a player this is how you feel. If they get scared of the dungeon that you design and they want to back out, that's your fault, right? Either you have cowardly players or your dungeon's too dangerous. So the point is, the game almost shouldn't go in a direct, straight line as you hoped it would.
Right. Like if that's the type of game you want to play, where you kind of flesh out a story and then have the players play through your story, then just make it a module. Say, hey guys, I'm running this module. Are you guys interested in this?
Right.
Blah blah blah. As opposed to just saying, hey, there's a campaign in my world. Players tend to want to be free to do whatever they want to do there, like when they're playing Skyrim or something.
Right. It's just not typically a good idea to tell players, especially if if you got a player that comes to the table with a 4-page backstory, right? Just not really a good idea to tell him none of that shit works. You know what I mean? At the same time, it's also up to the DM to let them know that that's not the kind of game that we're playing here today.
And not to take the DM side or anything, because we never want to do that. But as a player, make sure that when you're doing things like creating your backstory, that you understand that the world that you're playing in. Don't come in with like space aliens and shit in a high fantasy game. Probably not going to be cool with that.
My spaceship crash landed. Yeah, that's right. The only thing left behind was this annihilation laser. These PPC particle projection cannons.
That's right.
So, and anyway, the point is, and where I'm actually going with this is the incorporation of new players and the removal of old players. As you guys have heard us talk about before, we've been running a game for about 2 years now, and I believe we have 5 of the original 8 PCs. One moved. We're still in contact with them. One quit all games, only plays online now. And one recently, he's kind of come and gone, but his work schedule changed. But for 2 years, we had 6 to 7 of the 8 PCs for a long, long time, and we recently acquired a new guy. And you have to make sure that when you incorporate the new person, that there's a reason as to why. And if you're in the middle of a dungeon, the reason isn't he's the lone survivor of a party that was TPK'd. Right? I mean, that's literally as cliche and formula as it gets.
I would question whether he's the one that TPK'd the party.
That's right, yeah.
He's a secret rogue.
How did you make it?
That's right.
All these things kill these powerful people, yet you come out alive? There's a problem. I don't trust that. Try to be creative. Try to have a reason as to why they're there. In our case, they were getting ready for an army battle, and they were in a neighboring province, and they're high enough level to where it made sense for them to meet a warlord of the new province.
A Star Lord.
Yeah. and so that's where our new guy came from. But when introducing players into your game, guys, it's very, very amateur to be, from a DM perspective. It is very, very amateur to be like, make it to where this new guy has to prove his worth to the party. I'm not saying it doesn't work sometimes, but I'm saying 100% of the time that I've ever tried it the other way, where you put the new player in a position to where the PCs need him for something or her for something, it has always come out better.
Right.
It has always come out better. Because once this guy proves to help them with what they need, they now accept him as one of their own because he was helped. Otherwise, he has to touch and prove and all this stuff to each individual person.
Yeah, and not to mention, like based on what kind of character knowledge he would have, right? How would he know how to win them over, or what he can say, like,
right?
Because the goal is to have a cohesive game where they're cooperating with each other, and there's a little bit of metagaming to get each other, on the same page a little bit, but the less of that you can do, the better, and that in the former situation where the one player's having to prove why he's worthy to the team that's been traveling together for like 100 years already, it's really hard on that player to think of ways where he can actually be useful.
So I mean, yeah, especially, and to touch base even further, player side or metagame side, however you want to say it. If I walk into a group, these guys have been playing together for 4 years, a year and a half, 6 months. Nobody knows me, but I'm supposed to sit down and explain to these random strangers why I'm needed. There's one of you guys out there in TV land saying, if I'm a wizard, I'm always needed. If I'm a barbarian, I'm always needed. And there's a lot of truth in that, but it's only going to win over so many people. There's some people who are going to say, we don't need you because you're a wizard and we don't know you. We don't trust what you're planning on doing.
Here's the circle of friendship. You're here.
That's right. I would show you the circle of trust, but it's far too gone out of your reach of line of sight. It's not in line of sight from you. I know that because you cast 5th level spells. So navigating through your game, I'm not telling you to ignore your plot lines and focus on character-driven stories, and I'm not telling you to ignore the characters and only focus plot lines. I'm just saying, make sure it's cohesive. Make sure that you're using a bit of both. If there's a chance to explore a character's background, it's more than okay. If it takes away from your story, it adds extra gaming sessions, right? So, we've been running our game for 2 years now. This the one that we talk about on the show a lot, and our highest level guys are 17, I think. 17th level, and there's a lot that goes on in giving someone something to do that makes sense from 1 to 17. But my players seem to be okay with the game. They seem to understand what's going on and why they're not retired. But when I told them when I began this game that I planned on pushing them to 20 so they could play a D&D 5th edition from 1st to 20. That was the goal. That was the goal, was to let them feel, and they'd even go into epics a little bit, depending on, what happens and what they do. But the point is, sometimes you have to end games early because it makes sense, right? I know that, those of you who read novels, or watch TV series, and you're like, oh man, I wish I had another season of 24, or I wish I had another season of The Shield, but, The Shield ended in a good way, and, it is what it is. Sometimes you just have to end them.
They did get another season of 24, and it was amazing.
And they did. They're coming back. It's back on the air. Yeah. 24 is good stuff, man. Go out.
Maybe not use that example, but
yeah. Go out and watch 24. Is what you should take away from this.
Right.
What do you guys think though? In the past, what have you seen? How have you seen players necrotically affect a game, and how have you seen DMs infect their games? What have you guys seen that you don't want to see again, that maybe we can blast so that everyone can share your pain, so that no one has to go through what you went through, right? Remember, let me ask you, Corey. You were in a couple of different games before you landed in mine. What do you think? What was one of the biggest mistakes you've seen on the player side, not the DM, but like one of your people, you people.
You're talking like.
Let me rephrase. What is one of the worst things you've seen? What is one of the worst? How is one of the worst things you've seen a player affect a game in a negative light?
Oh, when Dallas joined our game,
That's right.
it just went downhill.
Yeah.
Oh no, and in one game, we had as a team, we were trying to kind of sort of get the party together in the DM's world, and in that world, elves are very exclusive, and they don't really take the outsiders. But we had been sent off like specifically to go find outsiders to help stave off an orc invasion or something, or a dragon invasion.
Right.
And one of the players had a weapon that was kind of evil, and and so to protect the Elven clan, it was best not to let him even know about it, or like to let him touch it.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the Elven party members decided he was gonna go tell the superiors about it, and then so everybody got in trouble, and it became this big thing. Like right. it pretty much derailed the campaign from then on, right?
I agree. I remember.
People got geese to go serve like penance, and then and then he ended up getting assassinated by party members later because of that, right? So it really drove a wedge in the campaign from an early stage that was really hard to come back from. We do have a question or comment from Rudy. For me, people not doing tutorials. So I guess like getting.
Wait. What? Rudy, for me, people not doing tutorials. Can you elaborate on that?
Like as a new player coming in, you want them to kind of show you the ropes and how to like kind of like a quick run through instead of like a big campaign, or.
Well, without getting more information, I'm gonna go off what I think you're saying. So, is it Rudy?
Yeah.
So Rudy, your big thing is tutorials, okay? I could not agree with you more. And we've touched base on this, including today. This will be the third episode, and I think it's important. You have to know what kind of game you're running into. I keep session reviews of everything that happened in my game. I can tell you what happened in session 4. I go back. I think it's right at 200 pages right now. Our Saturday game. And if someone wants it, their new PC coming in this example, wouldn't know anything about those things, but as a player, you get an idea of what's going on. You get an idea of the world. Yeah, I mean, if tutorial shows you everything and they just skip it. Oh, you're talking from a DM perspective. If tutorial shows you everything and they just skip it, and I don't. Yeah. Again, I agree with you. You can lead a horse to water, can't make it, or camel to water, but you can't make it drink, right? It's kind of a pain, man. If you go through a lot of work, you type up a bunch of stuff, you shoot them an email, and they decide
they don't put in the work, basically.
They don't put in the work. I mean, they're gonna fall behind in your game, and really, instead of calling them out on it and making it aggressive, treat it like a girlfriend or boyfriend, where you can kick, cuss, and scream at them, but it's probably not going to get the point across. But what's probably going to work better is if you just let it settle, and later on, all the information that you sent them 4 months ago comes to surface and they have no idea what's going on, maybe it kills them. Maybe they should have taken the time to read. You know, I mean, and any player that tells you, you know, well, I don't feel like reading this, blah 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 blah, and you're in a story-driven game, not, you know, just a hack and slash, they're in the wrong game, or you have the wrong players. I mean, however you want to look at it. Um, but no, I agree with you. My players, I almost treat it like a job. I talk to my players outside of my game via phone and email all the time. I ask them what do they think, what's going on, you know, how do they feel about this person, this NPC. And I don't do it for their knowledge, I do it for mine. I do it for mine, so, but it should also be theirs, you know. I mean, you know, make sure that you're available to answer their questions and touch base on them, right? Like, you almost got to treat them like children sometimes if you're the DM. Call them up, hey, you know, did you get all the information? Did you read it? Did you have any questions about anything? And warn them, because a lot of this stuff's going to come up, and I just, you know, I don't want you to get left behind.
And I think that's kind of one of the prevalent issues in the online tabletop stuff is kind of its ease of access. So you tend to get more of those, I call them like the lazy players. Like if you're a player and you're in this game and your DM's actually going through all this work, learn the game system, learn the game, learn the world. You know, it's like 10 minutes. It takes 10 minutes to do. It's not that difficult. You know, don't half-ass it. It's a hobby, man. You should get into it and have fun with it.
Yeah, and not to mention, not to mention, you know, if you feel like, and I stress this a lot, and this is one of the few times that the player, I believe, agrees with me. You know, I've had players tell me before, oh, I didn't have time. So I'm a full-time pro fighter, I have a full-time day job and a full-time night job, you know, and I run, you know, two full-time, long-term D&D campaigns, right? So, point is, for, you know, every little bit of work that this player has to do, the DM is doing a plethora more.
Right.
So, you know, if your DM is taking the time to put together a great game for you, and to the point to where you need tutorials, have the respect to check them out. Read the material, you know. So you don't walk in here saying, I'm playing a drow. Well, we're in a world where a drow doesn't exist, so how did that happen? You know what I mean? Like, oh, we're playing Warforged, so we're not Neberon. Or I specifically told you that dwarves were killed out. Why are you making a dwarf? Oh, well, I secretly managed to survive it. Well, they've been dead for 5,000 years, so you'd have died of old age. I mean, did you read anything? You know, I mean, so, you know, don't be that player, because really you're creating a hiccup for everyone else.
Right, you know, and like I said a little while ago, you know, it's a hobby. Put some effort into it if it's something you enjoy doing, and if you're not going to put the effort into it, find a new hobby. I just don't. It's hard for me to sympathize with that. Like, if you're not putting in the effort for something that you enjoy doing, then why are you doing it?
Right, and to continue with Rudy here, you know, it's you know, you said, I mean, you're right. The rules are there to guide, not to limit, and I agree with you. Part of what I wanted to talk about today, a couple of questions that were asked on our boards were, how do we feel? And I'm just bear with me. I'm going to show you how this gets incorporated together. But how do we feel about incorporating older edition stuff to newer editions and blending and all this? We spoke about this before. 5th edition, I believe, was built to do that. I mean, you and I were in a game where a guy ran a module from '79. So the reason I'm explaining this is because the rules are a guide. They're not, and every DM is going to run things differently, especially if they're using their own world and not a pre-generated one. You know, for example, you may have Rudy may be a real big fan of the old Dark Sun game, but wanted to change a few things about the burnt world of Athos. So he kind of blends let's say Greyhawk with Athos and makes a different, Greyhawk style game with psionics being a huge deal. Um, in my world, there are no psionics, so those, he's decided to blend different things in this example to make something his own. But I feel like as long as the DM gives you a heads up of what rules he's using, what additional rules he's using, and what rules he has omitted,
then it's on the player at that point.
and it's on the player. But as a DM, you can't give and take mid game, right? You can't say, well, I thought about that. I realize you're too powerful, so let's change that. Because players are going to start, when you start punishing players for success, then they're really just going to scrounge to survive. They're not going to do anything heroic, and your game's going to be boring. You can't punish a player for success. Okay, so you're not alone, Rudy. You're not alone, buddy. The best way that I have found to fix this problem, and you're more than welcome to use ours. We have a page called D&D More Than Meets the Dice on Meetup. I think it's D&D More Than Meets the Dice. It's on Meetup. It's a D&D based page. You can join it for free. Compliments of Scott Hamala. You have to think about the rules. Yeah, I mean, Corey and I actually get together sometimes to test outside rules that I'm going to implement in my game. He takes time out to help me out. When we were going to we actually used the Pathfinder battle game when they were commanding armies for that same reason. But back to what I was saying, your previous comment about rounds, hours, dealing with stuff. Two things. It's not always bad.
Right.
You agree? It's not always bad, and most importantly, if you can get on the meetup board or find an own board or use an email, just create an email list. And I actually think the email list tends to work better because on the boards, people tend to do things out of order. But the boards work well if people pay attention. They actually work really well because it's all posted. You can go back and look at anything, right? You don't have to check emails. That's what makes it, and it's saved. That's what makes it beautiful. So the reason I'm telling you this is because if your party finishes a dungeon, they've made it back to town, right? And your game's coming to an end. Maybe you have 45 minutes left in the session. You can kind of talk to them about the town, describe the town, see what they plan to do. Then have everyone post on the board between sessions what they intend to do while in town, right? And I'm using this just as a loose example. That's going to save you so much game time. At the same time, helping the players deal with certain things is one thing, but if they're role playing in town, I mean, this is an RPG. Like that's not necessarily a bad thing, Rudy. So, and I'm not saying that you're saying it is. I'm just basically replying as best I can from the text. So, what do you think about that?
No, I agree. And we had an example of one of the players not having a really good understanding of the rules when 5th edition came out. It was Jesse in Scott's game.
Right.
And anyway, so like we're kind of talking about from an adult standpoint, but he's kind of a young kid, and he couldn't really afford to get the books or whatever. Mm-hmm. So he was kind of like he was playing a sorcerer, so he was trying to have to borrow other people's books mid-game mm-hmm. to try and figure out what spells he was going to cast his turn, and it really took up a lot of game time. And that can be a bummer. What we ended up doing is we ended up, putting in for a book for him.
Bought him a book, yeah.
And he got from that, and he was much quicker after that because he took the time to learn the stuff. So he was interested in it. He just didn't have like the means to,
He didn't have
to
the
get
resources.
he didn't have the means to get the book himself.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be kind of understanding about situations like that. But if you're like a grown ass adult,
Great point. Great point.
if you're a grown ass adult, it's kind of on you.
No, I mean, not to mention, you know, we're with a really good group here, and we saw a kid that really was interested but didn't have the means, so we as a group GoFundMe'd. We created a GoFundMe amongst ourselves, and we threw in money and we got him a book, right? That being said, not every group's going to be able to do that financially, and that's fine. But if that's the case, make sure that your players, type up and print out the spells that he has. Like get copies made so the guy has his spells so he can go home and look at them. In this example. Um, yeah, and if Rudy, you're helping them out. Yeah, the thing is, the thing is, Rudy, if you can respond to this, I'll be able to answer better. Are you talking about a game that you're currently running, and if so, do you use the same players, or are you running something similar to like D&D Encounters? Because you said something about you don't know who's trolling and who's not.
And are you doing like anonymous Roll20 stuff where you're just posting online and finding
Right,
a random group, or
right.
are you meeting in person?
Yeah, because there are answers to your questions. They just differ based on the setting, right? Like they just differ based on the setting. So, the most important thing, Rudy, is that you want to, you do want to know who's trolling you. I mean, you want to know those things, but you want to make sure the most important thing is to make sure that the players who are interested in your game, the players who are loyal to your game, the players who do what they're supposed to, get the help and playtime they deserve. That is the most important thing. The same game that he was talking about where the guy gets killed by players. One of the biggest issues that I had was in that game was that the DM would give me things and constantly change them. Which isn't, he hadn't DM'd in a long time, and I'm usually the DM of the group. He wanted to run a game. Fine, cool. But, from a player perspective, it's really hard. It's really hard to calculate your resources when they change every day. So, like, if you have 4 charges of magic missile, and you say, well, I'm going to use 2 of them and save 2 for the end boss, and then the next session you're like, well, you're out of magic missiles because I decided that one actually only has 2 charges and you used 2, so you're out. Like, you didn't really equate for that.
Right.
You know what I mean? You, in your mind, you did what you were supposed to do.
It honestly takes the strategy out of the game when you can't plan and do things like that.
Yeah, and remember that's the kind of game this is. It's really an RPG game. It's a strategy game. It's meant for the players to, especially at high level, your players should not be able to just walk through dungeons and slaughter everything in their path. Like, especially at higher level, they should have to really think about what they're using and what they're saving and what resources they're expending. And those are all things that bring to the game. And, as a player, you need to know your resources, and as a DM, you need to know their resources, so that the game runs smooth. Because, if Rudy spent 6 hours prepping a dungeon, and you didn't read over your spells, not exactly fair. Right?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, in my game, I gotta say, Corey knows what he's going to do long before I get to him. Right? I mean, and there's been a couple of times where the battlefield changed, and in the old days you had to declare a round of action, and then you had to do that round of action no matter what happened, right? So, and Corey actually didn't come from that time, yet he still plays that way. He's like, well, no, I planned on magic missiling him, so I'm gonna or whatever, I'm gonna attack this guy or blah blah blah. He pretty much, but he knows what he's gonna do, and he knows what the spell does, because if he's not sure, he's double checking when it's not his turn. And that's what you have to do. Your time to do research is not when your round comes up. You know what I mean? You don't just sit here and play on your phone and do all these things, and then it's my turn. Someone give me a player's handbook. That's not
right.
That's not cool.
And not to say that can never happen, because sometimes something happens right before your turn where you're like, oh shit,
right.
Now I need to look at this. And as a player, you don't have to have like every single spell memorized or anything like that, but you should be looking at what spells you can cast and what things you can do before your turn comes up, so that like, all right, here's my options depending on what happens. These are the things. I don't really know what this spell does. Let me look it up real quick.
Right. No, and that's true. And I mean, thanks for the great questions and conversation, Rudy. We appreciate it. We have an extra PDF put together from things submitted in. If you're interested, just email us at tabletop.rpgnow@gmail.com. Yeah, man, we'll shoot it over to you. Continuing with campaign navigation. From my perspective, it's really cool to watch the seed grow. And the story is never a straight line. It's like roots that grow. Things block its way and it has to go another way. I like to know where my game began and to see how far in every direction it went and what things were missed. I'm gonna bring up a pretty legendary topic for you true gamers out there, and probably gonna create a war between Corey and I. But I'm okay with that because he's not very smart. He's not very smart. No. So one of the best gaming franchises in history as far as success goes is the Final Fantasy series. The reason I'm bringing it up is because we've recently learned
that 9's the best.
They're remaking Final Fantasy 7. Okay, Vivi. He's an 8, right?
He's a 9.
Yeah, he's a 9. That's right. Yeah.
Come on.
I'm sorry, but
rookie mistake.
So I've played all the Final Fantasies up to 10, including 1. And it's funny that many people will tell you that their favorite Final Fantasy was Final Fantasy 7, right?
Mm-hmm.
But your true Final Fantasy players look at these people in disgust. Not that Final Fantasy 7 was bad, but from a story perspective. If you created a new gaming system and you remade all the Final Fantasies with the same graphics, no way do they tell you Final Fantasy 7 is the best, right? Final Fantasy 7 was the first game to have like modern graphics, we'll call them. But from a story perspective,
those triangle boobs are hot.
Those squares.
I was like 6, yeah.
Those no, but the thing is, Sephiroth was a weak villain. He was a terrible villain. Did he look cool? Yeah. Was he cool in Urgai's? Definitely. Did I like him? Yes.
Was he OP as shit in Kingdom Hearts?
Yes. Yeah. But was he a good villain? No. He wasn't a good villain. Let me tell you why. Do you think Hitler thought he was the bad guy in World War II? No. No, he didn't. Hitler thought he was saving the world. Just like Kefka did in Final Fantasy 3 or 6, whatever if you're going to be technical.
6.
In part 1, it was chaos, right? those were cool villains for a save the world type game. You know, Kefka was mad, legitimately insane, and he actually overthrows the first bad guy. He kills your enemy and takes his place when he beats Emperor Gestal, right? Um, and you know they remake Seven and Sephiroth this and Sephiroth that, but I don't know if it was you or Ting that said he's a Disney villain. Disney, yeah.
Yeah, he's a villain for like kids, right?
He's a villain to be a villain. He wants to destroy the world because that's his role in the game. He has no reason to. You know, like, there is no reason for him to feel the way he does. He's pretty epic, so there's no reason for him to want to end existence that is disclosed. So, you know, make sure that your story progression is online, or excuse me, in line with your character's progression, right?
Yeah.
What did Rudy say?
That's a lot.
For a few game servers. When you say, what's Good one, Rudy. So one of the things I'm going to tell you about, I guess Roll20, for example. In my opinion, and I'm an old school gamer, it's never going to be the same as tabletop or on a table. It just isn't. You know, I mean, and the reason I'm not telling you that it's bad or hard or anything else, I'm telling you that you are going to have a more difficult time than a tabletop DM that's sitting around a table.
Right, because when when you're online, like as I said before, it's very easy to just sit there, click, do your things. There's not a lot of input involved, or there's not a lot of effort involved in getting into it. Whereas when you have the old school type tabletop games, you're driving to people's houses, you're coordinating schedules to meet up and doing all these things. You're more committed to making sure it's a success, as opposed to this guy who clicks, I want to join this game. Oh, this game sucks. I'm going to drop out of this game and join this game.
Mm-hmm. And what I learned, Rudy, and I tried a couple of online games. We were using map tools at the time, and the one before that, I don't remember it offhand, but they were really big into map tools. And my good friend Z was really, really good at putting everything together. We were using a 4th edition game, and you clicked on your token, and all your stuff showed up, like it was pretty cool, right? I was really excited. But the point is, when you're at a D&D game, the DM is talking a lot. He's explaining all this stuff to you, which way the wind's blowing, and who's outside, and all this other stuff. But what I learned on the Roll20 games, on the online games, so you're marching the trail down south back to Pars, the kingdom you've recently conquered. Slaves are in tow to help rebuild the cities because you plan making it an outlast. Along the way, and it's very monotone. It's very, very simple. It's like you walk into a room. There's two gargoyles. There's two gargoyle statues. They don't seem to be moving, and a young elven lady on the red bed you see to the top left. What do? And it's almost like a video game. People run them almost like a video game, which is not bad.
Right.
But that is not the same thing as a tabletop RPG. It just isn't.
And I'm sure there's tons of good ones out there,
mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there's tons of games that work out really well, and they're very committed to the game and stuff. It's just that type of atmosphere is right. You just have a higher tendency to get those type of people who aren't as committed.
My advice to you, Rudy, and is this. As much as I've been DMing, when I started 5th edition, I was as new to 5th as everyone else. when we were in beta. We printed out beta books, and our friend works at a company that could bind them. One of the group people in the group. My advice to you is this: if you're going to run online, you want to run. You know, I would tell you to start at level 1 and run your game so you can learn and grow in the game as they do. If a game is easy to learn but has a rich story, it is the best way to go. Agreed.
Yeah.
No, 100% on point. 100% on point.
That's why you see a lot of these new games coming out are very rules light, right?
Yeah.
They're starting to understand that having these giant tomes of, textbooks that you have to read to understand what you can do on your turn and stuff is very taxing on everyone.
No, it is because it's and I hope I don't offend anyone. It's damn near like it's damn near like being part of a religion. Like you try to remember everything you're supposed to do, and you do something wrong, and someone's like, "Oh man, chapter 6, verse 5, sentence 3, you screwed that one all up." Like you're like, "Man, I can't memorize this verbatim. I'm doing the best I can, right?" So yeah, rules light, rich story. You're gonna have the best. You're gonna have the best game of your life right there. I think that your overall best bet in an online game, I would interview my players.
Yeah.
I would talk to them and not interview like, why should I let you join my game? Because if you have that attitude, they're gonna be like, fuck you, dude. Like, I'm out. But if you say, hey man, this is the type of game I'm looking to run, do you think you'd fit in this? Like, do you think you're a good fit for this type of game? And then you explain your game to them. And then, well, what kind of character are you thinking about making? Let's make them. Let's see what we can come up with. And you do this, with each and every player, they are going to walk into the game a little bit different than they did other games. You need to make your game stand out.
You're talking about like a generalized game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, if you're using something that's more video game-esque where they can save, what online game system are you using? Is this something that you're designing yourself, or is this something that's already on point or already online? And we'll wait for his response. In the meantime, we're getting to the next portion of our show. We want to make sure we touch base with everything. So talking about the things that Rudy's brought up today, you do want to make sure that your rules light, especially if you have newer players.
And if you're creating your own game too, like just kind of look at games like Arma 3 compared to games like, I don't know, Hearthstone, right? Arma 3 is super in depth. It's got rules for everything you could want in it. Hearthstone is very, very easy. It has a very low entry level. Hearthstone has millions of people playing. Arma 3 has like 50,000 or something.
Right.
Not a lot of people, right? It's not that Arma 3 is the worst game. It's just that the entry level is so high to get in because there's so much things that you have to learn.
Mm-hmm.
It's just very difficult.
Kudos, Rudy. If you're a kid and you're building your own game, that's going to take a lot of hard work and dedication. I commend you for it. Stick to it, man, and and remember you're not going to appease everyone. You're not going to appease everyone, and you will shatter your games trying to. You will shatter your games trying to make everyone happy. I'm not telling you that certain people aren't as important as others. I'm telling you that, in my games, I know that some people are going to like sessions more than others. That's any game you're at, right? If I prefer story and he prefers combat, and we walk into a session that's all story, not going to be Corey's favorite session, right? But if the next 5 are combat heavy, I don't feel like my character evolved.
Right.
So you're not going to make everyone happy every session, but the point is to make everyone have a good time. Everyone needs to have a good time. Everyone needs to feel like their characters or armies or whatever you're utilizing has evolved. They need to feel like they have furthered the story along, or they've been pushed back due to bad rolls or bad decisions. They don't need to feel like they showed up and did a bunch of stuff for 5, 6, 7 hours and nothing got accomplished. Something needs to be accomplished, even if they lose the city they were trying to hold.
Yeah.
Or their spaceship gets shot out of the sky they were sending out for reinforcements. Like, something has to happen.
Yeah. I mean, that's just kind of life, man. You have to have steps that you're always progressing towards, and as a game, it's no different. As a player, you always want to feel like you accomplished something, and then when you're gaming in real life, you want to have fun while you're doing that. So like with other people, that's why D&D is a very social aspect or social oriented game. So moving on, what's our next topic here?
Next topic is, let's see what he says. Yeah, best if the. Well, what do you mean? Usually haters have a reason because he's famous. If common rule in life, dude. Let's pretend that this isn't a tabletop game talk show for a minute. If there is someone that is negatively affecting your life, you don't need them. You don't need to be mean to them. You don't need to be rude to them. You simply don't need them. If I were to sit down, if Corey and I were to sit down in your game, or we were to join your game, and people have a habit, and don't mistake what I'm saying. If I told people that I wanted to open a cupcake bakery, and Corey's like, what you could have with cupcakes, man? You could have like milk on tap, because milk goes great with cupcakes, and it goes great with milk, fudge brownies. So we'll make fudge brownies too. Well, I don't want to be an all-around baker. I just wanted to make cupcakes, man. Like, well, it's no longer my dream, right? It's not my dream anymore if I just let everyone push their ideas on me and I just deal with them. So, and I'm not telling you to shut them out. I'm just telling you, remember what you're trying to accomplish, and make sure that the people you surround yourself with are willing to support that. Right?
Yeah.
Makes sense?
When's your motivational book coming out?
My motivational book? I don't have a motivational book. Ordinarily, I would tell you not to take advice from me, and if you're a kid, make sure your parents hear what I'm saying before they you decide whether it's okay to take advice from me. But man, if there's if there's something bad in your life that you don't like, or someone's affecting you or telling you your game sucks, man, not everybody likes everything. You know what I mean? Doesn't mean your game sucks. Doesn't mean your game's great either if someone tells your game is great. But keep working on it, man. I've published 3 novels, and the very first manuscript I wrote, awful, awful, and but it was a learning experience too. So, just keep doing what you're doing, man, and you're gonna surprise yourself one day when this game is finished. I was one of the new mods, and I was in charge of. Oh, rock on. Well, yeah, Russians are crazy. Look up Russian Skywalkers on YouTube, and you'll understand Russians. But moving on, the last part of our topic, for the next few minutes before we go to questions, incorporating new players, not characters, incorporating new players and the loss of old players. And ultimately, to conclude today's show, would have to conclude with knowing when to end your campaign. And we touched on this earlier. Corey, sorry, I'm adjusting, guys. I have a broken rib. What are some good and bad ways that you think to introduce a scenario? You and I are playing brothers in a game, and I am moving. And I tell you, I would, I'm forfeiting my character to the game.
Right.
What does the DM do?
Probably send him off to do something. Either you can kind of send him off to do something away from the party. If he's coming back, he can be with the party as like a NPC that's not really involved in combat anymore, or potentially somebody else who wants to join the game can pick him up if they want to play him, and the other person's cool with that.
You can, you can NPC him. My go-to move is I would keep him as an NPC. I would say, Corey knows him best. Do you want to surrender him to someone? If not, at a point in the game where it made sense for him to walk off, we can get him to do something else, to handle some business otherwise. Which is, when Michael left our game, his character was still into the game a few sessions ago, right? Like, intertwined in the story.
He didn't make it.
Finally. What about a new player? Okay, story. You're running a game for 5 PCs, right? One of the PCs has a girlfriend that wants to join. She's never played D&D before, but she keeps hearing all these stories about this stuff going on, and she really wants to try it out. Now, your party is playing fugitives from the Imperial land of Norgard, and they're fugitives, and they're in a city, and they're keeping their identity hidden. A girl joins and says, "I'm a half-elf ranger." How do you introduce her?
So they're in the city, they're hidden.
They're keeping their cover. They can only talk to certain people because people on the black market, so to speak.
So maybe, in what context is this? Are they, why are they hidden? Or why are they?
Well, they're wanted.
Right. So maybe their contact knows this awesome ranger who can get him out of town and to outside the borders where they're not wanted or something along those lines?
Yeah, no, I mean that's spot on. Um, many there's many ways to do it, right? And so just remember, guys, when you're incorporating players and losing players, that it's not, oh, you're not going to be here anymore. All right, well, his character's gone. So we were planning on fighting this end boss, and now our wizard's gone. You know, like what do we do? That's not very cool. You know, make sure that you do it in the proper way, right? Last thing that we're going to touch on today, guys, is concluding your game. When will we conclude our game? When do you know your game is over? Um, what do you think? Because games are going to have higher points and lower points.
Right.
So how do you know when the game is over?
I think when the players accomplish what they set out to do is the kind of the natural end. The other end would be if the game just kind of sputters out, like if a bunch of people leave, a bunch of people aren't showing up. That's kind of more like a ending for other reasons, but
right.
But that's also relevant, you know. If that's happening in your game, you need to kind of be aware of that.
Yeah. So think of, and you know, I'm going to use a boxer or a pro fighter in this case. Like think of like a pro fighter. You know, he wins 10 fights in a row, then he loses one. He wins 5 more, then he loses 2. Now he's 15-3, right? Then he wins 5, loses 2. Now he's 20-5. Then he wins 1. Then he loses 5 in a row. Then he comes back and wins 3, loses 1, wins 2, loses. He's on the downward spiral at this point. You know what I mean? And maybe it's his age. Maybe he's just banged up, right? But the point is, he's not producing the wins like he once was. So when you're thinking of your sessions, think of it as a pro fighter, wins and losses. Do you consider this amongst a great session? You know, like on a scale from 1 to 10, was it a 7 or higher? If not, it was a loss. Are you still producing more wins than losses? Because if not, we're getting close to the end.
Right.
You know, my game right now is in a very odd point because they're supposed to do something before they got to where they are now, and they didn't do that. And they're probably going to suffer for it now. They're probably going to suffer for it now. That being said, I don't know if after this next session, if the game is redeemable. I don't know if the game can be saved. But there's still a lot of stuff I want them to do that they were supposed to touch on 50 sessions ago and they never did. Which was crazy, right? Because, you know, I had preached to them about saving the West and stopping the West, and they never went to the West. They refused.
I went West.
And their friend Electo was over there, and he died too. And so that's gonna come back to haunt them now, you know. And so you know, we'll see what happens, but there's a really good chance that the next session of this 2-year game ends, you know, a couple of weeks, right? So know when to end your game. You know, if you feel like your game's on a decline, you know, inject that thing with steroids, man. Really do something that really gets the game going, and if it just doesn't resuscitate the game, look for a conclusion. Because it's better for your players to leave wanting more than to leave feeling burned out and exhausted. Right?
Yeah.
You know?
No, I agree.
You just want them to leave, you want them to leave thinking, if I could have only done this, if I could have only done that, you know? And that's, you know, that's pretty much, I mean, that's pretty much pretty much end of it. But you know, what questions do you guys have? I think our next show we're gonna touch base on Traveler. We're gonna do a couple of one shots of Traveler, and tell you what we think. Cause you have the new edition.
The Mongoose edition, which is not the new edition, but it's the one before the new edition.
Okay. And would you say Traveler is rules light or rules heavy?
It's pretty rules light. It's got well, like for creation, it's very rules heavy. Like it gives you a lot of tools, but there's only one book. Like there's not a DM's guide and a player's guide. It's everything's rolled into that one book. So like you have world creation rules, you have player creation rules, but then once you're actually inside the game, it's pretty rules light.
Yeah.
Yeah. The new edition, which is the one I don't have, is extremely rules heavy, which is why I don't have it. It's like 700 pages.
Yeah, and I mean, man, nobody wants to read all that, much less try and remember it.
Yeah, I think that was a Kickstarter one from like the original creator is the new one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I wonder how many creators have been a part of Traveler.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Let me get to look up.
Well, today's July 4th weekend, guys, and we're gonna conclude a little bit earlier than we normally do. We hope we answered your questions. We'll have more questions from next time, and you know, I feel like to conclude, there's two major stories in the D&D universe that are always argued. The Dragonlance series, the Dragonlance saga versus the Heroes of the Lance versus the Companions of the Hall. Right? We've argued this a million times. But I feel like, sadly to say, I like Bob Salvador's writing more, but I like the stories of Dragonlance better. That's not to say that I don't like Bob's characters, because I love his Demon Wars. I don't like what I feel Wizards is making him do with the Companions of the Hall. Okay? So, just want to clarify that. But what I do want to explain is that I feel like when the Dragonlance saga ended, people were left wanting more. People were left wanting... And Raceland's dead. You know, all these guys have died. There's a timeline. There's lineage, legacy children, and all this stuff. But people still wanted more. You know, and I'm not saying that you guys that are the Dritz fans. I'm a Dritz fan as well, man. I even love Wolfgar. But I know people that quit reading the series because they felt like there were parts where it should have ended. Right? Now everyone's talking about the new book Archmage that's coming out. I think it's in September. But you know, people are thinking either Dritz is going to die to Grompier or something, or you know, something's going to happen. But my thing is, what people in the Dritz universe, people who are favoring the Dritz universe, are in their minds thinking, what's next? You know, like, what else is... I mean, the guy 1v1 to Dracolich. Like, what is there left to do? Like, minus fighting a god, you know, Dritz has done everything. You know, and I don't think that... and I'm not saying that, you know, Bob is such an amazing writer that Mr. Salvador, that he could probably turn out another 20 books if he wanted to, and people would still buy them. But there's a lot of fans that he's lost over the years, and it's probably not his fault. It's probably what he's being told to do, because his other stuff like Demon Wars, people flock to. But I'm saying the Dritz universe is being just drained. Like we're squeezing every little penny out of it. Where the Dragonlance saga was left to die gracefully, or left to conclude gracefully.
Yeah.
What do you think between dying out gracefully or going out gracefully and bleeding dry?
From a personal standpoint, I would want to bleed myself dry because I never want to die.
Well, yeah.
From a story standpoint, going out gracefully is definitely the way to go.
Well, I'm immortal. I mean,
that's right.
When I'm at your funeral, right, and I'm talking to your grandchildren and 5 times great grandchildren and all that, I'm gonna let them know that I want you to understand the reason he died is he failed his saving throw. I'm just saying, like clearly he didn't want to be here. He didn't want it bad enough. I guess that's gonna be it for us today, guys. We're gonna cut a little short. Happy 4th to everyone.
Hey, freedom.
Remember what?
Didn't bring my flag.
Remember what the 4th actually represents. It's our independence. It's not. Oh, sweet. It's that day of the year where fireworks are open, so I can shoot my friend in the back. Guys, we got a lot of vets. Donate to your PTSD victims and funds like that. Outside of that, guys, happy 4th, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, like, subscribe. Video will be up on YouTube in a few hours. Email us at tabletop.rpgnow@gmail.com if you have any questions or you want that PDF you mentioned earlier. And we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, we'll see you next time, guys. Thanks, Rudy.